Marketing Insider, a podcast for marketers focused on finding and targeting their ideal customers at scale. I'm your host, Monique Ruiz. We're switching up our podcast format this month by coming on video to better fit our streaming video topic. So, for all of you who normally listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or another audio only format, head over to either our YouTube page, which will be linked in the description, or claritas.com if you want to put some faces to the names. So, when you talk to consumers or subscribers, as we'll refer to them, about their favorite streaming platforms, they'll probably name some like Disney Plus, Netflix, or Amazon Prime. Then, when you ask them which ones they subscribe to, that list might just be Disney Plus and Amazon Prime. What happened to Netflix? Oh, I dropped my subscription because I'm waiting for such and such program to return. As a streaming service or agency working with a streaming service, defining, reaching, and influencing your most valuable subscribers and prospects is how you drive revenue. And if you don't have that data, it can be a battle of epic proportions. So today I'm joined by the SVP of Practice Leadership here at Claritas, Ron Cohen, and the EVP of Global Media and Entertainment at Magid, Mike Bloxam. They're going to chat with me about a partnership we forged to create the definitive segmentation of the U.S. streaming population, the SubScape Streaming Segments. Let me start by welcoming Ron, a familiar voice on the podcast. So, Ron, great to have you join us again.
Always good to be with you, Monique. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how many episodes I'll actually need to ask you to introduce yourself before I start getting the "we know Ron" comments. But for any listeners or viewers who don't recognize your voice or your face, can you just give us a little bit of background into your role here at Claritas?
Sure. I'm a practice leader, which means everything and nothing. I wear lots of hats. I get involved with product, with the commercial org, with marketing, as you well know.
Yep.
Sometimes with data science and research. And for this particular project, I've had occasion to wear almost all those hats.
Good. All right. Thanks, Ron. So, and then Mike, welcome to your first time on the Marketing Insider.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, so you're quite well known in the industry, in part due to the many speaking engagements you do throughout the year. But I'd love for you to give our listening audience a little bit of background into Magid and your role there.
Sure. Let's do that in reverse order.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, rather like Ron, I wear an awful lot of hats, and I have a background and continue to work across different aspects of what we do, everything from product development to designing research architecture, getting involved in actually doing some of the work, business development, client relationships, and so forth. And as you say, I'm out speaking a lot. So there's a lot of kind of thought leadership work and advocacy that I get involved in as well, which keeps it varied, keeps it lively, and keeps me super interested.
Okay.
In terms of Magid, well, now Magid's been around doing what we do for, I think it's about 67 years now. I've been with the company for the last 10 and a half. And we kind of run the gamut in the video and entertainment space in particular. We work with a whole range of clients on pretty much any aspect of their business life cycle. Some of that is content focused, some of that is audience focused, some of that's about business modeling. And we conduct primary research, and in more recent years have moved into the data product space for a vast array of clients, studios, networks, sports leagues, all sorts of different entities. And obviously it's become a natural step for us to partner with Claritas in the area where we're seeking to productize and to create really valuable tools in the entertainment space from a data perspective.
Yeah. Excellent. So I'm honored to have you guys both on the podcast today, and I am very excited about our topic. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So you two met at TBOT last year, 2023. But what sparked the conversation that led to our current partnership? So, Mike, you were speaking on a panel there, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I was actually giving a keynote on
Okay.
the work that we'd been doing, the SubScape work, basically the analysis of data we had that we'd done on this whole streaming population, which really kicked off with this question that we asked people about: when you typically sign up for a streaming service as a subscriber, how long do you normally expect to subscribe? And always about 40 odd % of people would typically say some period less than 6 months. And so that's what sparked all of that work. And we ended up with a segmentation, which we'll talk about. But I was giving a keynote there. And some of the folks that came up afterwards to speak, and there was Ron and other colleagues. And we just kind of immediately hit it off because I think we both saw the same potential for the utility of the data that we have. And it became kind of a meeting of minds, and it spiraled out of control after that. And now here we are.
Yeah, I did immediately see the potential for these segments, and approached Mike and asked him a few questions, and he said, "Who are you? Where are you from?" And then I told him. He goes, "Oh, I want to talk to you," and we did.
Nice.
So yeah, here we are a year later, and our dreams have come true.
What are some of the biggest or most unique challenges that streaming platforms find themselves facing?
Ooh.
Good, Mike.
I'll tell you what, I'll take first pass at that. Well, it's very interesting. I mean, look, there's a load of things that you can identify as challenges for streaming businesses, some of which affect any business,
Hmm.
which is subscription based, or frankly, any business which is, in what is now quite a tough market. But I think they all trickle down from one key thing, which is that up until about 2 years ago, um, basically we were in a totally different marketplace. Streamers were rewarded by Wall Street for saying they were going to spend loads of money on content. They were rewarded if they said quarter on quarter they got more subscribers. Um, but then life changed. Netflix announced that they'd had a drop in subscribers, and the spirit on Wall Street, which I think had been brewing for a little while, really came out. And it now saying you're going to spend a lot of money on content or anything gets you slapped on the wrist. And people are actually now starting to say not just how many more subscribers have you added, but they want to talk about ARPU. They want to talk about operating margins and when are we going to see profitability, free cash flow, all these kinds of things, which frankly, streaming services really didn't have to address in Wall
Hmm.
Street dialogue up until that time because the whole market was growing. There were net new subscribers coming in. People were primarily adding more services and so on. So all boats were rising. The way we talk about it now at Magid, it's kind of like that was the land of milk and honey, unicorns and rainbows, and it was all great. Now it's more like a knife fight in a dark alley because we've effectively moved, and this is the really important thing, we've effectively moved from a growth-based market into a share-based market. It's much more like being in the CPG market space, or probably a better analogy, mobile telephony. The market is not significantly growing. If any one company is going to achieve growth, they've got to steal share from somebody else. And to do that, of course, you've got to be much more forensic in the way that you approach audiences that you have, audiences that you want to have, new prospects and so forth, and understand what it is that motivates different sectors of the audience base and what value they represent, because not all subscribers are of equal value. Absolutely not. Some are more likely to come and go. They get their high churn. Others, they're going to stick around. And in that case, if they're not going to churn out, how do you get them to engage more? Especially if you have an ad-supported platform where it's not about the number of people who ever use, it's how many eyeballs you actually are able to monetize. So we're in a time now where we've got to get really sophisticated and really quite forensic in how we communicate differently with different audiences to achieve different outcomes. And that's, I think, it's the major thing which has created a different set of challenges for streamers than they had 2, 3 years ago.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mentioned in my intro that we partnered on the Subscape Streaming Segments, so this is kind of a good segue into helping to face those issues that the streaming platforms are up against. How do the, I guess, let me back up. What are the Subscape Streaming Segments, and how do they help solve those issues that streaming platforms are faced with now?
Okay, let's give a quick overview on that so we can anchor the conversation. The segmentation is based upon analysis of the entire population. So people, including people that don't stream or that have streamed and so forth. And they're a segment that we call the inerts, perhaps rather uncharitably. And they're about 19-20% of the population. That group is very, very slowly getting smaller. And I think that's inevitable over time. It's gonna contract as more people move into streaming. But often those aren't the people that are going to end up having loads of different services and going to be exploring lots of the smaller services. But then there's 5 other segments, all of whom are active in churning. All of whom are active in streaming, but they have different behaviors, different attitudes, and they represent different types of value. Some of those segments are stable. They are people who are much less likely to churn. Other segments, they're high churn because that's how they engage with media. Um, One of the things we found most significant is the attitudinal predisposition of consumers, how they engage with content, to the extent to which they talk about it to others, and if they're the kind of person who says, oh, I'm not finding anything on this platform that I want to watch right now. I might as well turn it off. I'll be back because I know they're going to release other content that I want, or that series is going to come back. But why would I pay for something if I don't expect to use it? It's really easy to switch it on and off. There's that group. And they're actually quite high value customers. They're very desirable customers. They engage massively with content. They engage with a lot of different media. But they're the ones who've worked out that it's really easy to switch it off and to switch it back on again. It's not actually a money driven thing. That group are actually, they skew affluent. They just don't see any point in spending money if I can turn it off. It's like turning a light out when you leave the room.
Yeah.
Some people leave it on, some people turn it off. It's easy to do. But for some people in streaming, they think it's too much of a hassle or they can't be bothered. So they're high churn and high value. But then you've got that up, and they represent volatility, but they represent value in other ways. They talk more about content than any other
They're
group.
influencers.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're your hit makers. And there's all kind of gradations of that. And the segmentation is a filter for how to look at the marketplace. There's a reason why just about every company has its own segmentation, at least one. It makes the insights that you have about audiences and it makes connection with those audiences much more manageable, frankly. Much easier to do so profitably. And that's really what this is. We don't insist that everybody has to use our segmentation. But our segmentation is consistent across over 30 services and the market as a whole. So you get a very, very consistent and very strong market view on a range of different factors because we have this segmentation. And obviously what we've done by collaborating through Ron's team is we've made that segmentation and the characteristics that each one of them represents eminently accessible. You can reach the households that are one segment versus another, the volatile segments versus the stable segments. And you can reach the individuals through the channels that work with the right kind of messaging. Because having a segmentation is all well and good, but unless you can activate against it, it's kind of a nice to have.
Yeah.
And we were very keen coming in. We wanted to create something which is actionable throughout.
I will add to the use cases. The fragmentation in the streaming space used to be all, streaming video on demand, SVOD. Over the past year or two, we've seen an explosion of fragmentation between, advertising supported AVOD, free, which you might call fast. There are now hundreds and hundreds of channels, if you will, that streamers can either subscribe to or access, and they all have different business models, different value propositions, and different use cases. So whereas analyzing churn, predicting churn, minimizing churn was maybe the primary use case, understanding that when these SubScape streaming segments were originally developed, there's a lot more now that you can use them for and gain insights into, such as advertising sales for ad-supported streaming services.
Yeah.
Just to give a simple example. So it's even more useful now than it was when we first started doing this.
Right, exactly. And Ron, I'll direct this to you first, but are the streaming segments useful only for streaming platforms, or are there other types of industries or companies or whatnot that can leverage them as well?
Well, of course, the streaming platforms are going to have the most use, gain the most insights, because they're going to have more use cases. But certainly there are agencies who are working with them, media planning companies, but any advertiser who's thinking about advertising in the streaming space, and that ought to be all advertisers, have potential use for this. They want to know who composes the audience for a particular service, and even lower. You can look at content, but at the root level, right? Who are the subscribers here? Who would I be advertising to?
Right.
Are they aligned with my audiences? So potential use cases are very large, and the potential user base is as broad as any other marketing application, really.
Yeah, good to know. And Mike, I'll shift this question to you because you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I know it will be a question in some of our viewers' minds. Are there some competitive differentiators from others in the industry who offer similar solutions, or is what we have created a truly unique offering?
Yeah, it's always an interesting question, isn't it? How do you define uniqueness? There's always a way of saying yes and no to that question. Look, certainly when we came to market, I mean, look, we did the initial work for this, the deep analysis, which came out with the segmentation in the middle of 22. And we realized that there was a there. And so we said, okay, there are things here we need to be measuring on an ongoing basis. And we started doing that 1st of January 23. So now we've been in market for almost 18 months, gathering data every single month on a whole vast array of metrics across the marketplace. And I think to that extent, certainly when we came out, and I think still, this is largely unique. Yes, you can get access to information about many of these things, and it's a great compliment, actually. I mean, there's a handful of companies in the marketplace that have seen what we're doing, and they've adopted some of the learnings that we've done, some of the things that we've found to be significant. They're now drilling into those areas as well. So, that's a good thing. The market needs to do that.
Right.
I mean, this whole notion of how we talk about churn, for example, we brought the perspective to the marketplace that, in short, to put it in terms of a soundbite, which we kind of like, is that churn is actually the cholesterol of streaming. There is such a thing, there's such a thing basically as what you could call good churn. And when somebody leaves a platform, inevitably that's a bad thing. If they're not going to pay you next month, that's a net negative. However, there are different reasons why people churn. Some of those are directly correlated with behaviors that you want. It's about people who are churning out because they're coming back in and resubscribing because you've got great compelling content. There's people that are super engaged. They might turn off, but they come back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's churn that's associated with the vibrancy of your platform. If you don't have any of those people that are coming and going, it's because you don't give them a reason to come in. You're not culturally relevant. The buzzy shows are the things that bring people in.
Right.
A lot of people stay, but those people that leave, they're going to come back. So there's a set of behaviors which are correlated with that kind of churn, churn that is motivated in that way, that you desperately want. And that the people that do that, they're affluent, they have kids at home, they spend more on entertainment certainly than any other cohort. And as we say, they're your hit makers who bring other people in. And then obviously there's the less good kind of version of cholesterol/churn, which is that, there's a problem with the service. They either just think it's too expensive, they can never find content that they want. Those people churn and they don't intend to come back. So one thing is you have to know what kind of churn you're dealing with. You have to know which audiences are more likely to represent different types of churn, because you're going to be going in with different kinds of messaging. And because we've been able to connect this to another major data set which we have, which is emotional DNA, which is content level, title level insights, we're able to say that different segments live in different program territories. We understand what kind of programming that they lean into. We understand what they think about that programming and how it resonates with them emotionally. And that means you can target different audiences with the right kind of content that's actually going to resonate with them when you're bringing it out, rather than hitting everybody with the latest big tentpole or whatever it might be. When you say, no, let's get some differentiated communication out to these people so that we can actually hit them with the right kind of message in a way that's going to respond to the types of value they represent and the behaviors they're most likely to exhibit. All of that is unique when you look at it across the marketplace. And then we have satisfaction metrics, which we understand the linkage to things like intent to remain with a service, intent to churn, NPS scores, and all the rest of it. There's about 27 different measures of satisfaction, which we're able to look at. All of these things combined, and that go so deep and that go across the marketplace to enable a really forensic understanding in the context of how other services are performing. Those elements are definitely unique.
Right.
And the fact that we've appended it to what we're able to get out of Claritas, to Ron's point.
As if all of that wasn't unique enough, right? By linking the SubScape streaming segments to Prism and connections, we're now able to understand not just the streaming behaviors that Magid is collecting in their research, but other behaviors. What cars are they buying? What financial services are they using? What are their other psychographics? What are their demographics? What are their lifestyles? What are their hobbies? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? And we've now been able to syndicate these segments because Claritas' segmentation systems are syndicated. So we're able to measure, right? What's the size of this segment? Where are they located? How can I reach them? Through all media, right? We've built digital audiences out of these segments and syndicated them out there in the digital ecosystem so that they're accessible for, display campaigns, for social media, for, all kinds of marketing campaigns where you might want to message one of these audiences, one or more.
Right. Ron, you're already answering my next question. I was going to ask, are they a standalone solution or do they work with other Claritas, Magid, or industry data? So you answered it right
But,
there.
that's part of what makes this solution unique, is that it was built for one set of use cases where you're going to get a lot of deep insights into the streaming and viewing behaviors of people, but now it's been linked to everything else, and everything else that Claritas collects, which is tens of thousands of pieces of information
Yeah.
about a household, uh, and they've been syndicated, so they're available now. You can go to your favorite DSP or DMP and find these audiences.
That's the key thing. I mean, all the benefits of an identity graph, and we all know that really strong identity graph is an incredibly important and powerful tool. But connecting that into streaming behaviors and all the attitudes and factors that are important in that regard, I think that's going to be really powerful. It's the thing I'm really excited about. And from an advertising point of view, if you think about AVOD and FAST services, we're able to profile users of those platforms, and to some extent down to users of viewers of particular content on those platforms. And you actually say, what is it you need to know about that audience in terms of the relevance to different product categories or even to specific brands? And to be able to assess the value of an audience from an ad sales point of view, as well as from a planning and buying point of view, I think is really powerful. It's one of the things that I'm most excited about with this collaboration. I don't think I've yet got the notion of a limit to what we're going to be able to do with this. I'm really excited.
To quote Mean Girls, the limit does not exist, if we're talking. All right. So it's almost like you guys have seen the questions that I'm going to ask for you because, Mike, I was going to ask you to walk me through a use case if I'm a Disney Plus or a Tubi, for example, but you literally just gave a use case. Are there any other quick use cases that you can share with our listeners who might still, the wheels are turning? They're like, how can I use these? How can I utilize these segments?
Sure, really simple one, and a fundamental to any business in any category. You got to focus on your cost of acquisition, and you've got to focus on long-term value. Okay, cost of acquisition. There's some very, very simple ways in which you can positively impact that straight off the bat. For a start, when you're putting out a whole load of information and you're talking about streaming or propositions, maybe you don't want to be talking to the people that aren't in the streaming market, the inerts. This way, we can actually cut them out completely. And then there's another segment which we identify in there called digitarians. They're one of the two high churn segments. As I said, there's one that's high churn, high value. We call them hypers, but the other lot are high churn, low value. We typically talk in the industry about high churn subscribers as one amorphous group. Oh, these serial churners, whatever we want to call them. There's lots of different names for them. Fine, we can do that, but when you actually look at them, the data makes it very clear. There is one that is high value and there's one that's low value. The digitarians are what we call the low value ones. They don't really have TV as a super central part of their world, not like the hypers, who are voracious consumers of video. They live more in the digital space. They're on Snapchat, they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok, whatever it might be, YouTube. So TV is not essential to them, but they're also more likely than any other segment to be using somebody else's password or to be jumping from free trial to free trial.
Right.
Whereas, interestingly, the hypers, the other high churn group, they're more likely than any other segment to pay full price and buy direct from the streamer when they come in. So you've got to look at this and you say, okay, if we're talking about long-term value or cost of acquisition, we want to be able to only target the people that are going to be high value. We basically advise most of our clients, not all of them, basically avoid digitarians. You're going to get some of them anyway, but if you're actually trying to increase the long-term value of your subscribers and find people that will engage more so you can sell advertising against them, don't actually spend money getting the digitarians. Yeah. So cut those down. If you were to take out the digitarians and the inerts from a buy, then you're immediately going to improve your effectiveness because you're actually engaging with people that want to be in, they're prepared to pay for it, and they're going to engage. That's one very simple way. And then the other one I would just throw at you is like churn mitigation, driving more stability into the business. Again, there's mainstreamers and TV and loyalists, pretty heavy consumers. They don't tend to hop around between services. If they leave, it's more likely going to be because there's a fundamental problem and they're not going to come back, or they don't intend to come back. But at the same time, you can't avoid the hypers, the high churn folks, because they are so important to where the revenue goes month by month. They represent 11, 12% of the population. Throughout the last year, the last 12 months, on average, they've accounted for around 30%, 32% of new subscriptions every month, which are many times resubscriptions, but the account openings, if you like, every month. And 21%, I think it is, of subscription drops. So they are disproportionately important in terms of monthly revenues.
Right.
And you need to target these people. And your goal there is probably to say, can we get 25% of our hypers, our high churn, high value subscribers in our subscriber base to spend 2 more months of the year with us, rather than trying to get them on for 12 months, which for most services is less likely.
Yeah.
And by the way, we have an index of the indispensability of all the services in the eyes of different segments. So you can say, okay, if you're Netflix, hypers are much less likely to churn. That's not rocket science. But where do the other services rank? How churnable are you? How indispensable are you to these hypers? And then you can work out what's feasible. Final point on this, because it's a good stat. Ages ago, when HBO Max was still HBO Max as opposed to Max, we looked at how many high churn subscribers, digitarians and hypers, were in their user base as a percentage. And we said, if you actually got 25% of that group to spend on average 2 months of the year more on the platform, paying full price, that would have put $112 million to the bottom line.
Wow.
Now, that's a pretty achievable goal if you're targeting the hypers and you've got the right content. But you've got to target the right people
Yeah.
with the right reasons to do that.
Exactly. So, Ron, tell us, I know you guys have been talking and we already said the sky is the limit of where this partnership can go, but what do you see as the next evolution of our partnership with Magid?
Well, we met this week in New York to discuss exactly that, and it has to be the linking of our segments to their content specific data, the emotional DNA that Mike was referring to. It will make everything much more powerful, much more useful when we can get past the subscriber level linkage and into the viewership content based genre format. There's a lot of good content in the Magid data, and I think we can make it much more useful when we drive that linkage down a level.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Mike? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. To be able to look at the data at a title level, viewers of a specific show or a specific franchise or subgenre of content, and say things like, okay, well, let's define their advertising value to both whether buyers or the sellers. What products are they buying? In what kind of frequency and volume? And where are they buying them? And all of this kind of stuff. But also it feeds into marketing, because the more you understand about your customers, obviously, the more specifically, the more relevantly you can communicate with them. But it also impacts content strategy. If you can really understand who, in a really granular way, is leaning into what types of content, then that tells you if you're looking to build a particular type of audience. You're saying, look, we want mums who like 35 plus, or whatever it is you're looking to build because you're weak, or African American women. Then you can start to say, fine, what are they leaning into in a content sense? And how do we connect with them? And to be able to put those things together, I think it's really powerful, because at the moment that's until now, that's not been possible.
Right. So we're recording this about a week and some change before Stream TV Show, which we are going to be co-sponsoring there. So I will put some more information in the description box about Stream TV in case you're watching this podcast as soon as it goes live. But can you tell our listeners what we have planned for our co-sponsorship? I know we have a keynote session, so I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, you just heard more about that. This is a lot of the things we're going to talk about in our session. We will also, as sponsors, we get a booth there, so we'll be set up to talk to people one-on-one about the solutions that we've developed together, but also about the other products and services both Magid and Claritas can offer, including some of Claritas's new artificial intelligence technology, which will also be exhibiting there. So imagine you've defined your audience of hypers, and you're trying to attract them to either stay on the platform for another 2 months, or even better yet, rejoin. You can have a conversation with a virtual hyper and say, well, what kind of content are you interested in? And who are your favorite stars? And what's the last show you watched? You binged, for example. And using the data that we've collected, we've taken these large language models and fed a lot of research data into them, so that you can have a conversation with your target audience. We're going to be demonstrating that at the show, and hopefully that'll get a lot of interest. As you know, we were at a show a couple of weeks ago where that technology really wowed people.
Yeah.
And
it's super impressive.
On that.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But what a great way to actually understand your audience, talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Exactly.
I think the thing about the presentation, it's very much focused on what is critically driving an awful lot of people's businesses right now and not preoccupying their minds. It's basically about winning in a share-driven market. That's I think it's a part of the name of the title.
It
actually,
is,
winning in a share-driven market, and it's all about using this approach to optimize subscriber value. That's really what this is about. And where are we? Well, to even say when we're on, I think we're on at 2:10 on Tuesday, aren't we, Ron?
We are, yeah.
Here we go.
Well,
Local
I say
time.
we. I'm not part of it. Ron and Mike are our speakers. So. All right. So I mentioned I will put those details in the description, but I think that leaves us at a good place to end the conversation for the day. So, Ron, as always, a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Monique. Thank you.
And Mike, thank you again for joining us.
My first time. Look forward to doing it again, I hope.
So
Thank you.
I do want to give you Mike, a second to plug anything else exciting that's happening over at Magid. And I want you to let our listeners know where they can go to connect with you and learn more about what Magid has to offer them.
Oh, gosh, yes, certainly. Well, Magid.com, unsurprisingly, is the email for the company, and I'm mbloxham@magid.com. We've got a lot going on right now. We continue to do really interesting custom work for our clients, and leading over into the sort of more productized end as well. One thing we're doing fascinating at the moment, one of our clients is actually ingesting some of the work we've been talking about, some of the data into their forecasting models around where time is going to be spent going forward. So we're doing things like that. We're also long way down the line with a new product we've brought to market called Brand eDNA or Brand DNA, which is similar to how we look at TV shows within emotional DNA. But we've pivoted that across because the market's been saying, hey, can you do this for brands as well? Because then we could bring those two together. Mm-hmm. Who knows? That may be a future collaboration with Claritas. And as Ron said, we're doing a load with emotional DNA and connecting that to the segment data in Claritas, in Prism, in Connections. That's on the pipeline as well, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, exciting stuff. So again, I keep saying it, but check the description for links to everything that you've heard here today that we've mentioned. And finally, I want to say thank you to those of you that are listening at home or on the go. If you've not already, please take a moment to follow the Marketing Insider so you never miss an episode. Rate us 5 stars on your podcast app of choice, our favorite being Spotify, and share us with a friend or colleague so we can keep the conversation going. And with that, we'll see you next time with a brand new episode. Bye now.